No one thinks about taxes as mobility expense in high tax countries.
He's Tom Blankenhorn, the founder of Borderless Strategy, where he helps location-independent entrepreneurs and digital nomads optimize their international tax strategies. He spent over 8 years at PwC, advising some of the world's biggest companies before launching his own entrepreneurial journey, in which he noticed many entrepreneurs and nomads lacking practical global tax advice.
A lot of people are not educated on money. They don't know how money works.
Now, he's on a mission to help global entrepreneurs take control of their finances and grow their wealth so they can reinvest the money into their business and grow with confidence.
If you're able to reinvest that money, and your business is going to grow faster, at the end, you will have more employees and you will help more people.
He's sharing this episode what to look out for in order to get protected and best practices that you can apply right away in order to optimize your finances, especially if you are a perpetual mover like a digital nomad. And not only that, enjoy it. Hey Tom, welcome to Authority in the Wild.
Hey Gabe, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, especially because I know this topic, it's so hot right now with a lot of people moving around the world, working remotely, opening businesses that can be run without borders, basically. They might end up in different problematic situation if they don't plan their financing. And that's why I'm super excited to have you here in order to debunk some myths and as well share the real truths about planning when you run borderless businesses and the right way to do it.
Yeah, you said it right. Nowadays, like much more people are starting online businesses, traveling the world, which is kind of something a little bit different than the normal activities or the normal business structures that you see out there. So they're quite interesting. They open up a lot of possibilities. But as you said, in the meantime, there's a lot of information in the internet. So I always try to help people to gain some clarity in this type of topics. If they read something that is too good to be true, check it twice or thrice just to make sure that that information is correct and they don't end up doing something illegal or even doing something that is not wrong for their case.
Exactly, because it's so much contradictory information out there. I went through the same process, like being a nomad for 6 years now and running my businesses basically from different countries all the time. And now even moving the business from my home country, I know exactly what you mean. Like I faced so many struggles in finding accurate information because every information I found was contradicting the other one. And why is that the case? And what are the most common mistakes people make when they start running a business remotely?
I think there's a lot of contradicting information because at the end, taxation or all that has to be international, has to do with that a lot with the law, and law is at the end can be subject to interpretation. So there are many different people having different types of interpretation under the same type of law, which creates all those differences. But also, not necessarily, sometimes you can read in the internet information for someone or giving some type of advice, but that advice doesn't apply for 100% of the people. Most of that advice is maybe for one type of person, or at the end, yeah, every situation is different. So at the end, you need to check what is going to happen for your case. And nowadays, people are from different countries. These countries have different laws, rules, and regulations. They're traveling to different countries. So you have so many different combinations that it's difficult to get through all of that noise.
Indeed, and the classic example it's probably a United citizen that no matter where they move, if they don't of their citizenship of US, they'll still pay taxes in US. But I know that for other countries, it's kind of still the same if you don't deregister. Can you share some examples of various countries, let's say European Union countries, because most kind of have almost the same laws? If I don't live in my home country in the European Union anymore and move to another country and my business is not there, how can I optimize better my taxes in order to avoid paying unnecessary taxes that I don't even benefit from it anymore, not living in that space?
Yeah, many cases like that. You said it right. Each country, it's different how they register or the rules there. As you said it, for American citizens, they're taxed based on their citizenship. So their only option is to renounce US citizenship. Almost only. They have also strategies. They can move to different places like Puerto Rico, but that applies for them. But for instance, for EU citizens, if they're already traveling the world and they don't spend, there's this common rule that says 183 days, right? So generally, which is half of the year. So if you spend less than half of the year in your home country, in of the times you should be stop being a tax resident. But this doesn't apply in the EU. For most of the countries, they have that rule that if you spend more of 183 days. But also most of the European countries have something that is called center of vital interests or economic ties or social ties. So if you have some type of these ties to your home country, they could potentially still consider you a tax resident. So it's always an advice if you're planning on leaving your country to reduce taxes, or you're already a digital nomad traveling the world, cut as many ties as possible in order for the tax authorities not to keep you as tax resident. And this has to do the same with as we mentioned before, right? As it's law, and some countries say economic ties or social ties. Of course, some of the countries, they are open to interpretation. So even if you can have some place to stay in your home country, if you have your flat available to you, some countries can even say you're still a tax resident over here because of social ties, or still have one type of tie. Germany is a case that there's even the famous saying that this tennis player had moved to Monaco, but he had a place available to stay in Germany in their parents' house or something like that, and the tax authorities claimed that he was still a tax resident in Germany. So at the end, for most Europeans, they should make sure that they cut as many ties as possible, and always try to check this or double check if that is sufficient to leave. And if they're leaving and are not able to cut all of the ties, it's always a good advice to set up a tax residency somewhere else in a more friendly country. And one key suggestion is always to check with countries that have double tax agreement with your home country. This prevents you in case that your home country still claims you as tax resident. You won't be taxed twice for the same income. So most double tax agreements, they have something that is called the tiebreaker rule. So they decide who's going to tax you. So it's always an advice and to follow this path, depending if you are able or not to cut all of the ties. If you're a perpetual traveler or digital nomad and you can even close all of your bank accounts and everything, and you can make 100% sure that you don't have any tie, it's easy to leave. But yeah, and you also need to spend as less time as possible in your home country.
Yeah, true. And I remember that I read something that even, for example, if your family is still there and you are constantly visiting them like once or twice a year, they might, especially for my home country of Romania, they might consider that you are still a tax resident there, even if you actually quit having anything there, like bank accounts, properties, and so on. And basically, the biggest one is owning something. If you own something in one country, of course, depends on the country, but in Romania, at least, if you own anything, you cannot remove your residency. Plus, there is another thing, like, for example, for us as Romanians, if we have an ID, a local ID, in order to get that local ID, you need an address. That address is like basically your residential address. And if you have that, even if you're not the owner, probably your parents are the owners or your family members and so on, you are considered a resident and you cannot break ties with it. But for example, if you are able to do this, depending on the legislation on any country, how you can optimize your taxes in a way that you basically are almost tax free, if there is such a way to do it.
Yeah, of course, if you're able to break free of your home country, let's say you close all of these ties you mentioned. I'm not sure about the case of Romania, but we can check. But it's like family ties. If you have kids going to school, they will still consider you a tax resident. But let's suppose you are able to break free of there. It's always as well easier to break free of a place you're not a national, because you can tell them you don't live there, or it's easier, right? But let's suppose that you are able to break free. First, you have to think about this on a personal level and on a business perspective. So on a personal level, it's always a good advice to establish tax residency somewhere else. There are countries that have 0% tax, like famous one is Dubai or UAE, but also like you can set up tax residency on a personal level in Paraguay, which doesn't tax foreign income, Costa Rica, or there are many countries around there. So you go there, you establish yourself over there, and then you also need to think on your business side. You can think to put your business somewhere else in another country with low corporate taxes, right? One famous case that is coming out in Twitter quite a lot lately is Paraguay tax residency with a US LLC that if you're not a US citizen, but of course this doesn't apply for every case, and you need to check if it makes sense for you. But most of the people, if they are able to break free, they could apply that strategy.
Yeah, and basically I have a similar setup with the exception that I'm still a resident of Romania and I moved my business from Romania to US because the instability of taxes when it comes to the business side were quite daunting. They were increasing taxes for the last 12 months, basically each quarter. And having the LLC in US and not having a physical presence there and also not having any ties, even that my clients, majority of my clients are from US, I don't pay corporate taxes there. And of course, if I have to get money out of the business, I'll pay the taxes in Romania since they have this double treaty with Romania. But if I move, for example, the residency from Romania to Paraguay, for example, depending on the treaty that US has with Paraguay, maybe that's the case in which I basically don't pay taxes if I don't live in Paraguay.
Yeah, in this case, I'm not that sure. I need to check the treaty for Romania and the US. Every country has different. I'm not 100% sure if that setup you told about Romania, but for instance, Paraguay and the US don't have a tax treaty, but the tax treaty in this case, it's not going to change anything if there is one or not. So Paraguay basically only taxes you on income from Paraguay, and foreign income is exempt. So if you're a tax resident in Paraguay, you will only pay 10%, which is the rate on Paraguayan income. And the US, which has something interesting, which is the US LLCs, they're called, if you open it under your name and you're not a US citizen, it's a disregarded entity. So you will pay taxes on your personal level. So you have to check. And in this case, it works fine. But you should leave Romania. I'm not sure about your personal side now, if it makes sense, because we have to check what type of business, how you're settled in Romania. But of course, this depends on a personal level, right? And we have to check the rules of each country, because also the countries have something called CFC rules or management and controls. They have different type of names. So they could, if you're operating a foreign business from your home country, that your home country could claim that business as a company from that country. You have to pay corporate taxes for that business in your home country. So no, that is one belief everyone has, that just opening a company somewhere else, they will be paid the corporate taxes of that new country, which is not true. Most of the European countries have this type of rule. So if you're managing a company from one country, you live there, these rules will apply, and there's a potential of the tax office in the future coming to you saying this is a company of our company, or they claim it as a, say you live in Spain and you have a company in Estonia, the Spanish tax authorities will come, you live in Spain, they claim it as managed in Spain, and they will charge you corporate tax in Spain for the last 5 years. And but not also that, if your Spanish clients can also charge you VAT and even fines and a lot of things. I think most of the people need to be really careful on how they, on the information they see on the internet, because, and also information they hear from someone else, because I'm hearing quite a lot this about people living in Spain. Someone else tells them open a company in Estonia, which is in the EU. Everyone thinks, it's a EU company, so I open it there. I only pay 20 or now 22% on the income that I take out of the company. But at the end, that's not, if it's 100% under your name and you live in Spain, maybe if you're not trading too much money or you don't have that much money, you can get away with it, but it's not right. But there's a moment when you're still start making a lot of money, most probably they will get after you, because that's not how the CFC or management and controls, or every country has different type of names, works. So at the end, you need to be careful in that case.
Indeed, and let's break it down in a way that people can protect themselves. If you can find a step-by-step process that usually follow your clients, in which they can be protected and to research, depending on the country, what can happen. Let's say first and foremost to investigate what rules apply to them, depending where they live, depending on their business are. If you can break it down in step-by-step process, that would be amazing, so people can know where to look for and what to search for.
Yeah, of course. I always try to start for my clients, and it depends on each case, but start with your home country and start checking your rules. And if you're already traveling and spending less than 180 days, check what are the rules to stop being a tax resident. For instance, in the UK, I was a tax resident in the UK, and it's pretty clear. If you have that and you spend less than 45 days, you stop being a tax resident, even if you still have a company over there or whatever. But most of European countries, they like this gray area of the economic ties. So make sure that you cut as many ties as possible on your personal level. First exit on your personal level, and then check if it's better for you to set up a tax residency somewhere else. If possible, set up a tax residency in a country that has double tax agreement with your home country. And after that, checking based where you're setting up on your personal level, see where it's best for you, for your clients, for what you do to set up your company offshore. There are many possibilities to set up companies offshore, and even in Europe, there are interesting ones, but of course, it depends on each case, right? And after that, you can also start thinking about banking. Banking is something important you have to consider, because, for instance, you can open a 0% company somewhere else, but if it's impossible for you to get banking, it might not make sense. Or if you're like a business in e-commerce and for you have small margins, and then you have a bank that for every transaction they charge you a 5% fee, it's going to be either from your margins, right? So it's not that easy to give you like a clear step by step, but I would say first exit your personal level, leave your home country. After that, start thinking about the company and then the banks, right? And then all of that will interact together. So where you set up your personal level, you could think where to put your company, because think about the countries like the little boxes, and they interact each other and they have different rules between them. Most of the time it could work for most of the people, but I think I got lost.
No, no worries. It makes perfect sense because indeed, as you mentioned, like first your home country, then where you set up your business, then making sure you can actually run your business by opening bank accounts and not charging you a hand and a leg. And if I'll probably add here, it will depend as well where you live afterwards, because if you are a perpetual moving like a digital nomad and you don't stay a lot of time in different countries, and depending as well on the visa, because a lot of people travel but they stay on a tourist visa and they work, which is not really legal. And if you plan to settle for a long period of time, you might become tax residents in that country that you settle, and that might not be Paraguay or others that have this type of welcoming rules. It might be in a country like Spain, which tax a lot, or others in Europe.
Yeah, but something I say, if you want to settle down and if you really like a country, start checking each country, because for new residents, countries have interesting rules and some tax benefits. For instance, Spain is a perfect example that has something called the Beckham law, which you pay Like in order to attract foreign talent, they created this. It's called after David Beckham, the football player who went there, and they created this law, but that now it doesn't apply anymore for football players. But if you move to Spain, and you could potentially benefit of this law, which you pay flat 24% on Spanish income, and you're considered a non-resident. So for 6 years, 5 plus 1, you don't pay taxes on foreign income. Of course, this need to be well done. You need to check if it applies in your case, but you could potentially move to Spain. So it's something, consider where you want to move and then check if they have some tax benefits for that. Of course, that after 6 years, you become a full tax resident in Spain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think Portugal has something similar, if I'm not wrong. They remove it for a while, then they introduce it, I think, last year. And indeed, that's the beauty of this borderless lifestyle. If you have this freedom to move and to settle in a place that is different than your home country, you can optimize so well for not just your lifestyle, but as well for financial, and be able to reinvest those money instead of paying taxes to reinvest in your business and so on. And of course, there might be people out there arguing that, but it's not fair to not pay taxes because, taxes move the economy, they are invested back into infrastructure and so on. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, that's a very political topic, I guess. For me, everyone is free to do what they want, and if they play by the rules and they are able to do it, they should go for it. And there are other countries that if you pay less money, you bring in money to that country. For instance, you move to even Bulgaria. Bulgaria, like its neighbor to Romania, they have a flat tax of 10%, I think. I'm not sure now, and that's so people move there, they invest money over there, and then at the end all of that reinvested money will move the economy, and that will go into infrastructure, right? If you think about where the money goes for each government, or start checking on that level, see if the equation makes sense for you. But I think everyone is free to decide what it's best for them.
And I love the perspective that you share because indeed that's the case, right? Like the economy still move because you reinvest your money and it doesn't have to go directly to the government because often, like after traveling to more than 25 countries, unfortunately, I noticed how corrupt are most governments, but we won't get into those those details. And yeah, that's the thing. Like this freedom actually allows to invest money in the things that matters to you, in the things that at the end of the day will move the economy one way or another. And the region that you usually move in will prosper because either if you have a family or not, you'll still invest a lot of money, and not just in day by day living, but in things like if you have a family, you'll put your kids in school or daycare and so on, and all those things will start to pump into the local economy, not to mention helping small business that you buy groceries from or whatever. And that's often overlooked, unfortunately.
Yeah, you said it right. If you're good and you're a good business owner and you know where to put your money, at the end, instead of paying taxes, which is your biggest expense, no one thinks about taxes as their biggest expense in high tax countries. But if you're able to reinvest that money, and your business is going to grow faster, and at the end, you will have more employees and you will help more people and you will help more clients and you will help, I don't know, bring more value to society, right? It's on a different path. And then with that money, you can also reinvest in other things, right? And other businesses. So it's an equation. Everyone needs to see what works best for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you believe is the case that most people struggle with taking control of their finances?
I would say it depends which type of person, right? But a lot of people are not educated on money. They don't know how money works. That money that you reinvest nowadays will grow faster, and that money has that exponential effect. But why people are not good at financial decisions, I'm not that sure.
Yeah, and I think the lack of education is a big one because I can speak from my own experience here. Unfortunately, I lack that. For many years, I was struggling because I had no idea how money works and so on. And luckily, I started to educate myself and made better decision. But I lost a lot of money because of lack of education on this topic. And I think it's a pity because a lot of people go through this. Unfortunately, it's not really taught in schools, and especially in the basic level in which like this is how economy works. This is if you just put, I don't know, money aside and you don't reinvest and you don't spend, the economy will stop, right? Like you won't make any more money for others. And basic things that a lot of people think, or this, for example, period that we are going through right now, in which the fear is high and so on, and people spend less, is why we enter in a recession and so on. And if you can give the basic advice to people, what those will be in terms of what to look out for when it comes to especially this economic downturns that happens nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, people, first going back to your idea of why people are bad with money, there's not this education. And today there's this big uncertainty, right? Rules are changing quite a lot. From a personal experience, I'm from Argentina. Argentina is quite an uncertain country, and rules are keep on changing every year. Last year, it was one of the cheapest countries to go, and I was there last week, and it was really expensive, even expensive than Spain, for instance. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur living, let's say, borderless life or being in several countries, you need to prepare for those unexpected events. You won't know what happens. It will be fine, but one of the best strategies I implement at least is diversification, right? Don't put all of your money in one basket because some rules can change from one day to another, and then your whole business is gone or your like whole life is gone. Try to have diversify as much as possible. I see nowadays a lot of people that are traveling the world and then have only one bank account. And then the bank account, because some of regulation that change and that they have to comply, the bank needs to comply. So that bank account gets closed. And then they're not able to spend any money. Diversify, have at least two bank accounts, right? In your business, don't try to rely of one type of client and if possible from different countries, right? And know that rules can change. So be prepared to be flexible, right?
Indeed, especially with this fintech type of banks, like I won't name them, but a lot of them, they are known for closing bank accounts without any actually valid reasons, or because the physical bank that are tied to, as you mentioned, change the rules or the regulations, and they're forcing these fintech banks that are just basically, if you want, a storefront, and they close like that bank accounts, and you end up without money. And having multiple bank accounts, and ideally in different currencies, different countries, and so on. Diversification for kind sources is gold, because if, I don't know, economy in United States affected, and if you have clients from EU, then you have at least two powerful economies and sources of clients that can rely on. Because a lot of people say that, oh, don't follow the news, don't watch TV, don't do that and that. And I hear them when they come from that space of negativity, a lot of things. But at least make sure to follow some sort of, if you want, a specialized type of news, a specialized type of resources like newsletters and so on, then you can stay informed about the changes that are happening. Because overnight, a rule can change and you end up in a position that you have no idea why your business go busted or your bank accounts are gone or whatever your ideal setup was and is not working anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I agree with that. I don't watch TV, for instance, but you should stay informed. You should know what happens in the world because at the end, it's the world you live. You need to know what's around. Unless you go and live in the middle of nowhere and you don't have clients, yeah, you could potentially do that, but you can cut through the noise, right? Go see the news without the negativity. Try to understand what's happening, right? For instance, now, like the US is very unpredictable right now. The tariffs came out, and so a lot of business models changed from one day to another, right? And people that were selling goods to the US, now they have to navigate through these tariffs. Of course, it impacts some type of people, then other people see that as an opportunity, right? Because of course there could be a new market, so you can see that those type of crises as an opportunity. If you want to make money, everyone says that in a moment of crisis, it's where you can make most money, right? So I would suggest to keep informed. Don't watch TV or the news, that the negative news, and try to watch it as seeing opportunities, because nowadays you can see opportunities everywhere.
And how you make sure it's a real opportunity and not a distraction? Because often there are these guys like that. A new trend is happening and you try to surf that wave and you just got distracted from the things that is already working and so on. Yeah, personally, I see this so many times happening. But in the same time, indeed, if you manage to be at the right time in the right place, you can make wonders when it comes to spotting those opportunities and taking advantage of them.
Yeah, I'm really bad at seeing opportunities, but I know people that see an opportunity right away. They know how to write that. And of course, for me, if it comes out and everyone knows about as an opportunity, it means you're late for it. So I say that most of the people that can get to some opportunity will happen if you're already in that niche. For instance, if you know some about a topic and some rules change or something, the opportunity comes out, you're able to see that because you're the first one. If it's an opportunity you don't know anything, you have first the learning curve, and then you can enter that market or that opportunity, and it's going to take time, and most probably you're late for it. So I would say keep out of those opportunities you see that seem fancy or something like that, or huge, and maybe you're late. So focus on what you know, because there are a lot of opportunities out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's much more easier when you enter a space that you're already familiar with and something happening in that space. For example, the example that you give, a lot of people like probably importing things from China, selling in the United States, and now they see like their business going bust because of tariffs. But China started making deals with other countries. Like now they're pushing deals with European Union. You can probably pivot. Let's say you sell on Amazon, but Amazon exists in EU as well, so you can double down on that. Or just a like small example, but definitely there are many others ways to take advantage of these type of opportunities as soon as they arise. Yeah, personally, I'm quite bad at that as well, like spotting these trends at the right time and truly seeing that yes there is something there, but probably yes, because we cannot be experts in any field in any, and usually these trends are in different industries, different areas. And going back a bit at the optimization part of your finances and so on, when you make sure, for example, that you have the right bank accounts, the right setups and so on, business wise, what you should look up for when it comes to optimizing this even further, in the sense that uh, probably most of people know the classic. Make sure you don't spend more than you make and so on. But how do you truly make sure that you run a healthy business that's not only profitable, but it's sustaining the lifestyle that you want?
Well, about the setup, you, and the same as we have been discussing, right? You need to prepare that the circumstances change. Even you on a personal level, one day you can decide to move to another country, and you need to that flexibility. So on a business level, if your business is growing and you have good margins, keep on doing what you're doing. And probably that is the right way. But then, of course, every business gets to a point where they should reinvest that money. If you have money, you can invest in new services and new stuff. But that's on a personal level of everyone. And then the type of setups, I would say, first, everyone will start with a pretty simple one, a company, and then on a personal level, paying themselves. You can always optimize the banking, right? Because payment processors, some of them charge higher fees than others. Of course, then you can think about, okay, for instance, something quite common is in the EU, if you have a company in the EU and then you have payment processing fees are going to be lower than other countries. For instance, you might go to Dubai, but then it's quite difficult to have those type of payment processing fees. You can negotiate, but they're not going to be as good as in the EU. And then you also have to play around with exchange fees because you the dinar to euro and so on. So you can look at the EU on that side, right? Maybe you don't have a company that has a 0% tax, but you have a 12.5 in Cyprus, and then good payment processing fees and your margins are low, so you can optimize on that side. But that is going to happen for each case, and everyone needs to check on their business. And then I think when a business grows, most of the entrepreneurs start investing in other businesses. Then it's always good to not have everything under one business. It's like the same as you on a personal level. First, you start a business and you incorporate an entity. It's not only because of taxes, but it's also to separate your personal liabilities. So a lot of entrepreneurs then start to investing in other businesses. So you open up another company, and in order to give the profits of one to the other one, you put a holding, so you can start optimizing on that way. But that is going to happen for every case a little bit different.
Yeah, and in terms of the biggest lesson that you learned from working for more than 8 years for PwC, helping big corporation like optimizing their finances and so on, what were your biggest lesson that us small entrepreneurs that are watching this or listening to our conversation can implement themselves or can be inspired by?
Big corporations don't follow the rules everyone sees out there, right? There are higher big teams that are going to do something that is tailored to them, right? So my biggest lesson is first to everyone, don't follow the rules or someone else doing something because it worked for them, but it might not work for you. And the corporations, if you check how every company in the world has their setups, they're different. Even in the same industry, they might have different setups because the company has different type of clients or the different type of shareholders or whatever, and you don't know what's happening behind. So my biggest advice is don't follow the what everyone is telling you in a case, and the big corporations do it for their case and tailor to them. You won't see one corporation the same as the other one, and they went there, they arrived there because they followed their own plan, not someone else's plan.
Yeah, true. And that's why it's so important to get tailored advice for your unique use case. Because the residency plays a role, the country that you're living in plays a role, the type of business that you have plays a role. All these small details can pile up. And speaking of a personal experience, I spent months doing these things on my own until I hire help to get everything sorted out. Because I was like, I have enough of do it yourself type of setups and stuff. And I think this is kind of a huge takeaway from this because financial world it's a wild world in which if you jump in head first yourself without having financial experience and so on, and even if you understand economy and finances, is super different to optimize everything for your unique use case. And if someone is in that situation, they're like, yes, I need help with this, where they can reach out to you in order to get help.
They can reach out to me in LinkedIn, Tom Blankenhorn, or even my website, borderlandstrategy.com. But yeah, happy to help everyone. Of course, I try to provide tailored services. I know each case is different. I don't try to follow one solution that applies to everyone. And that's the advice for everyone. Don't try to follow something that someone else did. And if you want to do it yourself, that will check everything. Nowadays, ChatGPT has a lot of information, but you should know how to use that, right? Because sometimes if you don't give everything to the prompt, it will give you different results and something that has nothing to do in your case. And it's not that easy. There's a lot of noise around. So
Yeah, true. And asking the right question, it's so, so important. Yes, we have this amazing technology, and the amount of information it has access to is much more easier for us to get now. But in the same time, it's one reason why some people spend 1 hour to find something, for example, when just Google was available, and others were finding the information in 5 minutes because they know how to ask. They know exactly the question to put. And it's same with AI. If you don't know what to ask and what to look for, and you can end up with wrong information, and that can cause only problems. And in order to conclude, I'd love you to create a small challenge for those listening. They can apply in less than 1 week in order to start to put the foundation of optimizing their finances, what they can do by themselves before asking for help.
I would suggest first evaluate your current situation. Check everything where your money is coming in, where your expenses are going, in what countries. Try to write down everything. think about all the bank accounts you have, how they interact, and based on that, you can start looking at problems. First on the personal finance or on your company, and make sure the normal, right? Where your money comes in, how much it goes out, and start looking at where you can optimize things. Not even on taxes. You sometimes, as I said, you have a business that relies on something like payment processors. You can get better fees over there. Sometimes if you see that you're paying half in taxes, okay, and it hurts you to pay that, start looking at options, right? Start seeing, have a bigger picture of what your impact is and start writing down. When I work with a client, I try to understand everything, even how they work with the clients and what their clients do or what type of work they do, because at the end things like that can have an impact, right? For instance, if your clients require you to invoice from a company from that country and they only work with local companies, it's not going to be worth it for you to move your company offshore, right? You need to keep on using that one. And so yeah, look at everything, start to look, understand your situation, and based on that, once you have a clear understanding, do a proper audit. And once you have that understanding, from there you can start moving forward and know where to go. But if you don't understand where your money comes in and where your money goes, it's difficult for someone to help you. They might guide you, but you should have a clear understanding on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And why I like this challenge that you put out there is because, for example, speaking of banking, like there are countries like US, for example, yeah, you can easily open an LLC in less than 48 hours. But to open a bank account took me, for example, 2 months. And they even close bank accounts if you sell to certain countries that are on the blacklist for United States, for example, Russia, Ukraine, China, and China, I don't think, but like Iran and so on. So depending on when your clients are, like you mentioned, it's so important and often overlooked, is you might be able to set up your business in a certain place, but if let's say most of your clients are from a certain country that you cannot sell to, you don't have a business, right? So love the challenge, and hopefully those listening start applying and doing a throughout audit and asking for help when is needed, because you cannot do everything yourself. That's for sure.
Yeah, ask for help. It's important sometimes to know that you need help. Of course, I'm not working alone. I always try to look for help on other people that know about that topic more than I do. And it also saves me a lot of time at the end, right? That time you can use it to invest into yourself. So the only thing we have limited in this life is time. So
Exactly. It's the most valuable thing, and often is the one that we don't audit as much as we should, probably.
yeah, agree on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing your knowledge with us today. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise, Gabe. Thanks for having me.